I didn't think saying no would turn my own family into criminals, but that's exactly what happened the night they decided my house was worth more than my safety. For weeks, they told me selling it was my duty, my obligation, my responsibility as the successful one. When guilt didn't work, they tried fear. When fear didn't work, they brought baseball bats. This isn't just a story about debt or property, it's about the moment I realized blood doesn't make people family, and locks don't stop entitlement. My name is Jasmine, and the house they wanted me to sell wasn't some luxury impulse buy. It was the result of 12 years of saving, side jobs, skipped vacations, and living below my means while everyone else in my family lived like tomorrow didn't matter. I bought it alone. My name was the only one on the deed. No co-signers. No help. No safety net. My family, on the other hand, had always believed money was something you dealt with later. Credit cards were free money. Loans were future problems. And consequences were something that happened to other people. The $150,000 debt didn't appear overnight. It was a pileup of bad decisions, failed business ideas, personal loans between siblings that were never repaid, maxed out cards, and one truly disastrous investment my uncle swore was guaranteed. By the time the truth came out, collectors were calling daily, lawsuits were being threatened, and suddenly everyone was panicking. That's when my name started coming up in conversations I wasn't in. At first, it was subtle. My mom would casually mention how lucky I was to own a house outright. My aunt joked that I was sitting on a gold mine. My cousin asked if I'd ever thought about downsizing. Every comment felt innocent on its own, but together, they formed a pattern. Then one Sunday dinner, my uncle finally said it out loud. If you sold the house, this could all go away. The table went quiet. Forks stopped clinking. Eyes turned to me like the decision had already been made and I was just there to rubber stamp it. I laughed at first because I genuinely thought it was a joke. But no one laughed back. They started explaining how family helps family. How they'd do it for me. How houses are replaceable but relationships aren't. Someone even said, you don't have kids. You don't really need all that space. That's when I realized something terrifying. They weren't asking. They had already decided my house belonged to them. Once I said no, the tone shifted immediately. Not disappointed, offended. As if I'd broken an unspoken rule I was never told about. The phone calls started the next day. My mom cried about losing the family home. My aunt accused me of letting everyone drown while I stood on dry land. My cousins sent long messages about loyalty, sacrifice, and how money changes people. I reminded them of reality. The debt wasn't mine. The house was. Selling it wouldn't even fully erase what they owed, it would just buy them time to make the same mistakes again. That logic didn't matter. They reframed the story so completely that I almost questioned myself. Suddenly, I wasn't protecting my future, I was betraying my family. I wasn't being responsible, I was being selfish. Every boundary I set became proof that I thought I was better than them. Then came the pressure. My uncle showed up unannounced one evening, standing on my porch like he owned the place. He walked through my living room, commenting on the floors, the kitchen, the backyard, mentally liquidating my life in front of me. You could get a great price in this market, he said. We'd only need part of it. Only. When I told him to leave, he smiled in a way that made my stomach twist. You know, he said, families have a way of solving problems when people won't cooperate. After that, things escalated fast. They stopped pretending it was my choice. They started telling me what would happen. How long I had. What they expected. One cousin suggested taking out a loan against the house instead. Another said I could move back in with my mom temporarily. I changed my locks. I installed cameras. And I stopped answering their calls. That's when the messages turned ugly. I was called ungrateful. Heartless. Greedy. A disgrace. One message said, if something happens to that house, it'll be on you. I didn't sleep much after that. For weeks, every interaction became a minefield. I couldn't open my email without finding veiled threats. I couldn't check the mail without seeing bills addressed to me in crumpled handwriting from my uncle. Every text, every voice message, even a missed call felt loaded. I started sleeping with my phone beside me. The locks and cameras felt good in theory, but in practice, they did little to stop the creeping dread that someone I had grown up with could truly want to destroy my home, and maybe me, with baseball bats. It was subtle at first. A broken fence post. A smashed garden gnome. At first, I told myself it was coincidence, or maybe neighborhood kids. Then my cousin left a note under my door. Don't think ignoring us will solve anything. No signature. No explanation. Just 4 words and a whole lot of menace. I knew at that point it wasn't a joke. I tried reaching out to my mom, hoping she'd intervene. Maybe she'd remind them that I wasn't responsible for their debt. But her response was cold. Jasmine, we raised you. We helped you. You owe us this. I hung up and felt a chill. I began documenting everything. Camera footage, text messages, photos of the minor damages, every phone call I could record legally. My lawyer advised me to prepare for the worst. And then came the night I realized preparation wasn't enough. It was a Thursday. I had just finished a late shift at work. The house was quiet, the lights dimmed, the TV playing soft music in the background. I was trying to relax when I heard the first sound. A crash, then another. My heart froze. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 as my camera recorded everything. I didn't even have time to wonder if it was an accident. The front door had splintered. Shadows moved in the hallway. It was them. My family. Baseball bats in hand. Faces twisted with anger and entitlement. Jasmine, my uncle yelled, you don't have to do this. We can fix everything. I told them to leave. My voice didn't shake, not yet, but adrenaline made my words sharper than I expected. Get out. Now. I shouted. My cousin swung a bat at the doorframe. Wood splintered, dust and paint chips flying into the air. I ducked behind the kitchen counter, screaming into the phone. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way. I could hear my mom trying to reason with them. She's just protecting herself. But even she wasn't stopping them. Glass shattered. A window was broken. My dog barked frantically, hiding under the couch. I stayed low, my mind racing. What do you do when family becomes a threat? I grabbed my small baseball bat from the closet, hardly comparable, but it was something. Every moment felt like an eternity. Then sirens. Red and blue lights flashing outside, reflecting off the walls. They froze. Police arrived and ordered everyone out. My family complied reluctantly, still shouting, still blaming me. When the dust settled, the damage was extensive. A door ruined, a window gone, and the lingering sense that my family could destroy more than just property. But I was alive. For the first time, I realized boundaries aren't just polite suggestions. They're survival tools. The police took statements from me, my neighbors, and even the few relatives who had stayed outside in disbelief. The officers were professional, but there was a tension in the air I couldn't shake. How had my own family come to see me as the enemy? The investigation confirmed what I already knew: this wasn't an accident. The broken door, the shattered window, and the deliberate attempts to intimidate me were enough for criminal charges. My family tried to argue it was just a misunderstanding or a family dispute, but the evidence didn't lie. Texts, recordings, and camera footage painted a clear picture. I had to sit down and listen as the officer explained the next steps. Restraining orders, criminal trespass charges, and potential prosecution loomed. Every word made me feel a mix of relief and guilt. Relief that the law was finally protecting me, and guilt for knowing the people I loved, or thought I loved, would face consequences. Court dates were scheduled, and my family's reactions were predictable. Denial, excuses, and attempts to manipulate me into dropping charges. We're family. Don't make this worse, one relative said. I didn't respond. I had learned the hard way that saying nothing was sometimes the strongest form of communication. I also consulted my lawyer about repairing the damages. The repairs alone were expensive, but they were nothing compared to the psychological toll. Every time I stepped into my home, I was reminded that entitlement could escalate into violence. After the initial chaos, I realized I couldn't just react anymore. I had to take control. The house was mine, and I needed to ensure it stayed that way, not just physically, but legally and emotionally. I changed every lock, upgraded the security system, and hired a security consultant to assess vulnerabilities. Cameras were placed strategically around the house, and I made sure everything was documented. If my family thought intimidation would work again, they were sorely mistaken. I also took steps to protect my finances. I moved accounts, updated beneficiaries, and limited what information I shared. No more casual family updates that could be twisted into threats or leverage. Emotionally, I started therapy. Speaking to someone helped me process the betrayal. It also helped me separate the actions of my family from my self-worth. I had achieved something they couldn't take away: my independence, my resilience, and my peace of mind. The legal process dragged on for months. Court hearings were tense. My family tried every manipulation tactic: apologies, pleas for leniency, and dramatic claims of we were just desperate. But the law was impartial. They were held accountable for their actions. Restraining orders were issued, and criminal charges moved forward. Through it all, I documented every interaction meticulously. Every email, every phone call, every visit was logged. Evidence became my shield. While they tried to paint me as the villain, the truth was undeniable. I was protecting myself, my property, and my future. By the time the first set of hearings ended, I realized something important. I hadn't just survived, they had underestimated me. My careful planning, documentation, and unwavering refusal to be intimidated were my weapons. And in the end, those weapons worked. The days after the hearings were surreal. Walking into my home felt different now. Every corner, every hallway, every room symbolized more than walls and furniture. It represented my independence, my strength, and my victory over entitlement disguised as family love. I could finally breathe without looking over my shoulder. I learned that family is not defined by blood alone, but by respect and accountability. My relatives had failed on every front, ethically, emotionally, and legally. I didn't feel anger in the same way anymore. Instead, there was clarity. Boundaries are not suggestions, they are the framework of safety. Friends and distant relatives reached out. Supportive messages poured in, validating what I had gone through. I realized that being alone in the fight didn't mean being isolated. There were people in my life who valued justice, integrity, and safety, of values I had upheld even when my own family tried to break me. I also recognized a deeper truth about entitlement. It is insidious. It disguises itself as need, love, or desperation, but ultimately, it is a refusal to respect others' autonomy. My family had crossed every line possible, and the consequence was inevitable. Sitting in my living room one evening, looking at the damage that was repaired and the new security system silently humming, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had tried to scare me, manipulate me, and take what wasn't theirs, but I had won. Not just because of the law, but because of my courage, preparation, and refusal to compromise my boundaries. The legal outcomes were decisive. Restraining orders ensured my safety. Criminal charges proceeded, and my family faced real consequences for their actions. Insurance covered repairs, but more importantly, the court recognized that their behavior was intentional, dangerous, and rooted in entitlement. Their attempts to manipulate me further failed. Apologies were empty, promises to never do it again were meaningless. I realized that justice doesn't require forgiveness. Justice requires accountability, and I had secured it. I also took steps to rebuild my life in other ways. Financially, I became even more vigilant. Personally, I strengthened relationships with people who valued integrity over entitlement. Every new friendship or professional collaboration reminded me that the world wasn't just my family. Emotionally, I allowed myself to celebrate. Not the confrontation or the conflict, but the victory of knowing I could protect myself. I had built my life honestly, and I refused to let anyone, even those who shared my blood, undermine it. The final message I carried from the experience was simple but powerful: saying no is not selfish. Protecting yourself is not betrayal. Standing firm in the face of intimidation is not weakness. And sometimes, love alone is not enough to keep you safe. Laws, boundaries, and personal resolve are essential. In the quiet moments after everything settled, I finally allowed myself to process what had happened. The adrenaline had faded, the police reports were filed, and the courtroom drama had ended. But the emotional residue lingered. For years, I had been raised to believe that family was invincible, that loyalty meant obedience, and that love demanded sacrifice, no matter how unreasonable the request. I had carried these assumptions into adulthood, believing that blood ties granted endless understanding and forgiveness. That belief had nearly cost me my home, my safety, and my peace of mind. When my family broke into my house with baseball bats, it wasn't just a violation of property, it was a violation of trust. It was the moment I realized that some people will rationalize anything in the name of entitlement, that love can be weaponized, and that shared DNA does not equal shared values. I had spent years hoping that logic, reason, and the bonds of family would guide their behavior. I was naive. The truth is that some people are willing to cross any line, and the only thing that stops them is a firm boundary enforced with consequences. I think back to the nights I spent lying awake, heart racing, listening for sounds outside my door. I remember clutching my phone, praying for the police to arrive in time, and wondering if I would ever be able to trust my own relatives again. Those nights taught me the sharpest lessons. Fear can be paralyzing, but preparation can be liberating. Anxiety can dominate your thoughts, but documentation, planning, and legal protection turn vulnerability into power. Every camera I installed, every lock I changed, every message I saved became a shield. I also realized something else. Independence is not just financial. It's emotional, too. Owning a house outright was important, but more important was owning my decisions. I had the right to say no without guilt. I had the right to protect my life and my property without betrayal being disguised as familial obligation. I had the right to prioritize my future over others' reckless choices. For the first time, I fully understood that personal boundaries are not negotiable. They are survival tools. The aftermath forced me to reevaluate relationships. People I thought were trustworthy turned out to be manipulative, while distant friends and even casual acquaintances revealed themselves as pillars of support. True loyalty is not determined by blood or obligation, it's determined by respect. Those who respect your choices stay by your side, and those who cannot respect your boundaries do not deserve a place in your life. That truth, though painful, was also liberating. Emotionally, I had to confront grief, disappointment, and anger simultaneously. I grieved the family I thought I had, the one that would support me, celebrate my achievements, and respect my autonomy. I mourned the moments lost to manipulation and guilt, the dinners that became arenas for coercion, and the laughter that had once been genuine but was now tainted with entitlement. Anger was unavoidable, but I learned to channel it productively, into legal preparation, documentation, and securing my home. Rage, unchecked, destroys. Focused determination protects. Legally, justice became a tangible, satisfying force. Restraining orders, criminal charges, and court hearings ensured that my family could no longer escalate their threats. The law acknowledged what I already knew: their actions were deliberate, dangerous, and rooted in a sense of entitlement that had no moral or legal grounding. Seeing them face consequences, watching the very people who tried to intimidate me realize that actions have repercussions, was not about revenge in the petty sense. It was about restoration of balance. It was the affirmation that rights and boundaries matter, even against those closest to you. Beyond the legal aspect, I also took steps to rebuild my life holistically. I invested in my home, turning spaces damaged by their intrusion into symbols of security and control. I nurtured relationships with friends and colleagues who valued integrity and mutual respect. I focused on personal growth, therapy, and self-reflection, understanding that survival is as much mental as it is physical. And every day, I reminded myself that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. The experience transformed how I define family. Family is not simply those who share your DNA. Family is those who honor your boundaries, respect your choices, and uphold your safety. Entitlement masquerading as love is a dangerous illusion. Some people will attempt to guilt, manipulate, and even threaten when they believe they are owed something. Recognizing this truth is painful, but necessary for personal safety. Recognizing it allowed me to reclaim my life. I also want to acknowledge resilience, the quiet, persistent kind that surfaces when danger feels imminent. Survival isn't about strength in the moment alone. It's about preparation, foresight, and the courage to enforce consequences. Every lock, every camera, every phone call logged, every lawyer consulted, every police report filed was part of a defense system I built not just to protect my house, but to protect my sense of self. Now, my house is more than just a structure. It is a sanctuary. It is a testament to the fact that saying no does not make you selfish. Protecting yourself does not make you cruel. Standing up for your life, your property, and your boundaries does not make you disloyal. These lessons are hard-earned, but they are invaluable. I survived not because of luck, but because of vigilance, courage, and the refusal to compromise my safety. Looking back, I realize that the most powerful revenge is not vindictive or petty. It is simply thriving in the face of betrayal. It is living your life with integrity, confidence, and independence, while those who attempted to undermine you confront the reality of their own actions. Justice does not require hatred. Justice requires accountability, and that is exactly what I ensured. Finally, I reflect on the future. I know now that I will always prioritize safety, boundaries, and self-respect. I will never again allow entitlement, disguised as family or love, to dictate my decisions. I will continue to build my life carefully, deliberately, and with vigilance. And I will remember that courage, preparation, and refusal to compromise are more powerful than fear, manipulation, or threats. My story is not just about surviving a violent intrusion. It is about reclaiming autonomy, enforcing justice, and discovering that even in the darkest moments, strength and resilience prevail. I survived. I documented. I enforced consequences. And I won. My house stands as proof, not just of property ownership, but of boundaries, courage, and the triumph of justice over entitlement.